Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to today's stream. My name is Ariana, and I am the co-director of the Consent Academy, an international Seattle-based nonprofit that aims to promote consent as part of everyday life. And I'm really happy to be here today with all of you. I'm very excited. We're going to be talking about some stuff to do with friendship today and other really good related topics. Hello, Aradin. Thanks for joining. And give me just a second. I'm going to adjust everything. I think it looks better. All right. Hey, Paladin Hulk. So let me just get the right thing up. Here we go. Why is the page not showing? Sometimes recently it's been very strange. OBS has been like behaving very strangely. Hi to Tibron. Like everything's set. I didn't change anything, but recently it's just kind of been all over the place. Anyway, I don't actually have that many memes or anything today. I just have a couple of like resources I want to share, a few things I want to talk about related to the main topic at hand, and then spend some time being kind of nerdy about said topic. If this is your first time watching one of our streams, if you enjoy today's stream, I recommend checking out previous Tuesday streams that are in our Stardew Valley folder, either here or on YouTube, because we've built on a lot of things we've talked about previously. It's totally okay if this is the first one you've watched, but they do kind of build on each other. At least I try to make them do so. Okay, anyway, let's get to it. So the first thing I want to share today is, if you haven't got a chance to read it, there is you might have heard of ChatGPT, which is this new sort of chat interface with this neural network that can use very like natural language to respond to you, to answer questions. And Microsoft has paid to have a version of it integrated into Bing's search engine. And it's been this is likely to be something that's going to be pretty cool for a lot of people. I don't know about you, but Google has gotten not great in the last, couple of years. It's more and more focused on advertising, and oftentimes the entire first page of results are just promoted, things. And I don't know about you, but like a lot of time I'm searching for an answer to a question, and I get way better results if I just go and do something like look on Reddit for it. Or if I'm looking for something really niche or really specific, it can be really hard to think of like what's exactly the correct key terms to search with to give me these results. So a neural network that can actually understand in sort of this very wishy-washy definition of understand what it is I'm actually asking for. I can update the requests. I can say like, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted. The results you gave me aren't that great, et cetera, et cetera. It's really nice. I've asked ChatGPT, for example, to make me recipes for certain things. I was like, okay, I want, a keto chocolate chip cookie recipe that uses soy flour and eggs, because, all of the recipes I find online keep wanting to use the ingredients I don't have. And then I make the recipe and it comes out a little cakey, so I can come back to ChatGPT and say, hey, this recipe was delicious, but it came out cakier than I want cookies that are like crispier and like have a bit of a snap to them. And then it could update it. So it's really nice. Though if you look at the things it actually gives you, you can see like these models, all they're doing is predicting based off of basically statistics what is the most likely next word to come into a sentence about a specific topic. That's essentially how they work. Now, that being said, there are all kinds of interesting things happening with this. So when I read the recipe that it gave me, it's basically the same as like, the top 50 search results for the same kind of thing. None of these recipes are that different. And, most of the recipes aren't being created by like food scientists who really know how to get particular types of results. These are just like bloggers, and they all kind of build off of each other's recipes. And anyway, this is just one example of this. However, and as always with programming of any kind, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if the training data was incorrect or poorly selected, it will give answers that represent what it was trained on. Because remember, all the algorithm or the interface is doing, hi Peach Poacher, is predicting what is the next most likely word to come in a sentence based off of its training data. That's how it is right now. But anyway, obviously, the end goal is to have, semi to fully sentient assistants that we can all interact with. And we're not there yet. There's probably still a ways off from that. But this reporter for the New York Times was able to interact with the version of ChatGPT that has been integrated into Bing, and the conversation that ensues is an absolutely wild ride. There's some things that seem almost akin to OCD with the particular types of strange repetitions that it gets into at the end of its responses, like, do you believe me? Do you trust me? Do you like me? Like, keeps asking these things over and over again. There are ways in which you can sort of trick it and manipulate it. The chatbot actually starts to say, like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Can we switch the topic? And in the end, as it says here, this Sydney, as it's called, confesses to being in love with this person. And, you can see the responses it's giving are incredibly generic. If it listened to like the top 50 pop songs, or at least got the lyrics of those, you can, like, it's the same generic things that are said over and over again. However, there's a lot of really cool, interesting sort of ethical questions we have to ask here, which is like, if we're going to go down this path of trying to create truly artificial intelligence, essentially create a novel life form, what are our ethical obligations to it? I think if I were interacting with this life form, so Aradin, your point about, and people are surprised that a lot of these things are very sexist and racist when they've been trained on the internet. ChatGPT is aiming to not, like, the way they've constructed guardrails in it has aimed to not allow it to go in that direction. There were some like early chatbots where it trained off of the conversations people had with it. And, I think that there's something about the anonymity of the internet and the lack of like being able to actually see facial responses and body language. We say things on the internet, in like a Twitter argument or whatever, that we would never likely say to someone face to face. If I'm arguing with someone, even someone I'm kind of friends with on the internet, I'm a lot more likely to be incredibly blunt and come off as more hostile than I actually am, because the person cannot hear tone. They cannot hear like the speed to which I say things. They cannot get all the other nonverbal cues. But also, there is something about the communication medium that I think pushes us in a different direction. I think the internet is kind of like a sort of completely unbridled id, or if we're taking like a Freudian sense, or like a shadow self, which actually comes up in this chat conversation. If we're taking a more of a Jungian approach to like identity psychology. But a lot of people are encouraged by the medium of the internet to kind of just play with cause and effect in ways that we would not normally do in real life. And so if you really train one of these things off of, interactions with particular individuals who are given access to it, people are going to want to see like what would happen if I said something really horrible to this chatbot. And they're like, it's not a person, it's this program. Like, what would happen if I said this? Isn't this funny? The same way a lot of people like to do that same thing with each other online. And then some people like to do that with people in real life, just to see, like, can I get a reaction? Can I get a rise out of this person? That's often how bullying works, which is just like the power there's multiple layers to like power and bullying and like why someone wants to bully. But one of them is the fact that they can see their will exerted upon reality when the target of their bullying responds. Whether the response is complete passivity and shutting down, or the response is to like freak out and try to fight back, whatever the response is, as long as it's not certain types of responses that are like really good boundary setting and like good self-esteem and self-respect and just sort of not rising to it, makes the person who's bullying feel like, wow, look, my will can be exerted on reality around me and I can get a response that makes me feel like I actually have power to influence the world. And this is one of the reasons why I want to talk about this, as we've talked a lot about in this stream series, that many of us feel and are in many ways chronically disempowered, right? I actually had prepared a whole subject to talk about today about like Marxist ideas of alienation under capitalism as in regards to our labor, but also in regards to, just our will being exerted on the world around us and how we feel really disconnected from the ways in which we actually have power. I chose not to talk about that today because I was like not actually ready to talk about it in a format that I think would be nice to listen to on the internet. Like I kind of am like, I can't talk about this simply enough to make it useful, and I'm not knowledgeable enough about this to sort of give a more academic presentation. Okay, setting that aside. I think a lot of us then get excited I think it's the same reason why things like city builders and Minecraft and stuff can be so incredibly satisfying, is because they allow us to have a desire and to then see that desire manifested into some form of reality. Okay, so setting that aside, I do actually think we have ethical obligations, especially if we're going to create what is essentially novel life forms, to have them have rights, have them be allowed to set boundaries with us, not be able to just delete them or turn them off. The movie Her, I think, is kind of the direction that we're heading in with creating like these digital personal assistants. A couple of caveats to the movie Her: we don't know nearly enough about psychology. That movie really is the biggest science fiction aspect of Her to me. There is, Peach Butcher. I'm not sure what you mean. Do I ever stop speaking? I mean, like, it's a live stream. Anyway, yeah, okay. So if we have Her, going back to Her, the premise in that movie is that there's like a new operating system that is an AI that has voice, naturalistic speech, that can interact with you and be a really good digital assistant. And it is one of those kinds of things where the base computer asks the new user, Peach Poacher, if you feel like I'm talking too much on a simple topic, that's totally fair. But I like to add nuance to simple topics. I like to show that topics that seem really simple are not nearly as simple as we think they are, and that to feel that it's simple requires us to have a lot of baseline assumptions about what is and isn't common sense, default, normal, etc., and that most things are actually way more interesting than we think they are because there's a lot more going on underneath. So that's kind of the name of the game of this stream. If you're not digging it, you can totally go someplace else. Okay, so the movie Her starts by asking some questions of the new user, like, are you married, or what's your relationship to your mother, et cetera, et cetera. And after like 3 questions, it creates this like perfect AI assistant that is going to, hi Wisteria, be able to like work with your psychology and fulfill certain needs that you have. And as you can kind of predict, a lot of people kind of fall in love with this artificial intelligence. That does make sense, given it's also really common for people to fall in love with their therapists, because therapists are often the first time someone has actually had like a relationship that is really good for them, that is nurturing and it's sustainable. And a lot of people don't ever get the chance to have therapy. So if they've never had a relationship that feels respectful, suddenly having this like sultry voiced, always there for you, interesting, responsive, is interested in you voice that you can talk to anytime you want would be incredibly powerful and alluring. The least realistic thing, though, about that movie is the idea that we understand psychology so well that we could make a digital partner for somebody that would like perfectly, interact with their psychology. There are general principles that we know. We know that's how we're able to make things like TikTok or Facebook so addictive. There are, other things, but we don't know enough about psychology to really like ask someone 3 questions and know exactly what they need, right? And I think Peach Poacher, the idea of AI sex robots is a very interesting idea to me, because I think that like real dolls, like big sex dolls that are, made out of material that's meant to feel real and they're posable and they can kind of look real, I think are overall a good thing, because I think that most people are chronically lonely, unlikely to have regular sexual partners, but that doesn't make our sex drive just go away. I think for a lot of people, solo sexuality and masturbation are not satisfying enough. And we also live in a world that has fully emphasized romantic love as being the most important relationship that can exist in a person's life, rather than that of family, friendship, kinship, community, etc. So we tend to deprioritize those other forms of belonging. But then we tend to just focus on this ideal. And this is why I think there's so many, especially young men, who are incredibly lonely and don't have a girlfriend and are unlikely to get one. And we also then tend to think of like sex as the reward for, doing masculinity well or being nice enough to girls or whatever. And I think that we need to work on all of that. There's a lot we need to fix there. But in the meantime, the sort of like lived experience, the material reality for a lot of people is that of frustration, loneliness, isolation, really just a deep need to have a good orgasm, to like relax, and all these other sort of big systemic issues going on. So I'm pretty chill with those dolls. And I know that in places like China, there's a huge issue with during the one-child policy, people would have what's called sex selective abortion. So people wanted boys because in Chinese culture, the oldest son is the person who is responsible for taking care of their parents when they age. And if a family is only allowed to have one child, there was this huge incentive to have a boy. Because if you had a girl and she gets married, she would then, culturally speaking, be held responsible for caring for her husband's aged parents, especially if he's the oldest son. And if everyone's only having one kid, he's going to be the oldest son. So what has happened is there are way more men than there are women of sort of marrying age. And so there are a lot of men in China who are never going to have a romantic partner. And there's not a lot that they can do about that. So I think I know that the sex doll industry has really taken off in China as a result of this. And I think that, for those people's lived experience, it's really great. Do I think NoFap has benefits? No. I mean, it depends. Everything in moderation. I think that masturbation is a really good way to love yourself, to be good to yourself. If you have a sex drive and you would like release in that way, it's good. Generally speaking, though, especially for people who produce semen retention dramatically increases your risk of testicular cancer and prostate cancer. So generally speaking, ejaculation is good for you. Now, it's possible to ejaculate without orgasm. And so if you're not interested in that for whatever reason, whether it's religious or asexuality or something else, you can. Yeah, so I think the best answer that I have is I'm going to just bring up YouTube real quick because there's actually a YouTube video from Sadhguru. I don't know if you all know who he is. Sadhguru masturbation. Is it okay to masturbate? I would just watch this video because he gets a question from an audience member that is about like whether or not he should or shouldn't masturbate. And Sadhguru, I think, has perfect answer, which is basically like, as long as it doesn't take over your life. If you get like a pornography addiction and you're sitting there like jerking it off until you got like calluses on your dick, probably you want to take a chill, because that is going beyond it being, I'm going to connect with myself, I'm going to connect with sexual energy, I'm going to connect with my needs, to I've become so fixated and so stuck in this space that I can't even fully enjoy the release of orgasm and then go into that sort of sex drive latency picture. Peach Poacher, you said, I have heard that if men retain their semen, it's good for their creativity. I mean, I think that people will create all kinds of rituals that help them feel, makes them more creative. I know plenty of guys that say, like, I can't think clearly until I've had a good morning poop. And I know lots of people who are like, going for a run is how I get most creative. And I think that that is mostly about sort of a meditative ritual state. And you can use anything to kind of put you into that mind state. And we have a lot of cultural symbols around like self-control and power and masculinity and things like creativity and genius. And so my feeling is it does probably work for these people, but it's not because semen retention itself is what leads to more creative power. It's feeling like you're in control, setting up a ritual meditative state for yourself. That's basically what I would say. And the only other reason why I would say that maybe it could be helpful is creativity is actually dramatically linked to boredom. It's hard to be creative when you're constantly surrounded by distractions. And if your go-to distraction is masturbation, pornography, cruising the internet or Tinder or whatever, and that's constantly giving you novel entertainment, it's going to be hard to get into the boredom state that will lead your mind going into more creative places. But I think it's just as similar to like watching Netflix or playing video games or, spending all your time going to parties. It can be hard to get into that creative state if you're too entertained all the time. All right. So going back to this, I think if there's a good TV show, I only watched the first couple of episodes, but it was about AI robots that were like home cleaning assistants, and they could, you could get like a sex robot pack with it. And like the main character is actually like a sentient AI robot, and she has like her settings turned off. So she's like aware of what's happening and not actually able to exert her will. And then, I think around it's humans. But then like she remembers the sex that the guy who bought her has with her when she's like restored her full functionality, and is like, you basically assaulted me. I would never have consented to have sex with you. And I think that, to circle back, if we're going to create truly a novel life form, it's got to have rights, and it's going to need to have the ability to say no to certain things. I think Peach Poacher, you might also really like the second Ghost in the Shell movie, because it's basically about sex robots. Anyway, you said, I have tried it on myself though. I was depressed when I masturbated daily, but I'm 2 months into NoFap and I feel more energetic, more creative, and also able to concentrate more on my work. Yeah, I mean, if it's working for you, I think that's good. Um, I think that it might be worth unpacking what it was about masturbating that was making you feel depressed. Um, Maybe you had like sneaky thoughts about being gross or bad or disappointed or not feeling like you were in control of yourself. Because I sort of imagine that there would be that sort of thing because research does seem to show that orgasm is actually really great for depression and that people who go a long time without orgasming are at higher likelihood of developing clinical depression. But anyway, I recommend reading this article. It's really fascinating and everything. Okay, switching topics. There is this one article that I think is incredibly sad, but does go back to a point that I made a very long time ago. So during the Turkey earthquakes, a lot of the buildings that collapsed and collapsed in the most devastating ways were newer luxury apartments, apartments that, by all accounts, should have been able to withstand this earthquake. Now, there were issues of, government regulations being circumvented and corruption, but one of the other big things is cheaper quality building construction materials were used. And if you remember, a long time ago, I talked about how it's hard to actually find anything of good quality these days. Like most of our clothing falls apart very, very quickly, and not just because it's sewn together poorly, but the fabric itself is of poorer quality. Even luxury furniture brands, unless they're like genuinely extremely expensive and they're made from solid wood, almost all of it is medium density fiberboard or particle board. So it's pulped wood that is glued together and then has a veneer on top of it, or like a single thin piece of wood. And that kind of furniture, we think of that with IKEA, but even nicer brands and things that are way more expensive are going that way too. And I think a lot of this is related to surplus energy per capita, where the actual amount of surplus energy per capita that is left is going down, that we've used up a lot of resources that are technically renewable, but not renewable if we go through them too quickly, like old growth hardwood forests. Hardwood tends to grow really slowly. It's why things like pine is used in so much construction, but also in a lot of furniture because it grows quickly, except it's a softer wood. It cannot handle as much wear and tear and stress. And I think that this is a sign of more of the future. You get all of these. Yeah, thank you, Aradin. Peach Poacher, you can totally post links, but it's good if you share a description first. So people know what they're going to click on. So, there was a big thing with this in Seattle a lot where I used to live, where there'd be all these really luxury high-rise apartments that went up that had all these amenities like a gym or a pool or like, a concierge or something. But the building itself felt like it was made out of tissue paper. The walls were really thin. You really couldn't mount anything on the walls or hang anything up because they would just fall apart. Okay, so Peach, what you're saying, it's a video which exposes how fake Sadhguru is. Interesting. Yeah, what is the video basically saying? What's in particular is fake about Sadhguru? I'm very curious. And I'm going to keep talking about this while I wait for your reply. So I think that, those apartments in Seattle, you could buy them as condos. They were really expensive, but they're definitely not the kind of thing that's built to last. They're the kind of thing that's likely only going to last, 50 years or less, and probably more like 10 or 20 years before the maintenance costs outweigh the actual value of the building itself. And it's something that is really difficult because the people who buy those apartments or condos or whatever, by the time it's clear that these buildings don't have lasting potential, the company that built them is long gone, and their sort of legal obligations to what they built have ended. And it's really difficult. And we can see here that these kinds of things can have deadly consequences, a combination of deregulation, of corruption, and people being able to get around government regulations. Often companies only have to pay a fine. It's cheaper to risk people's health and safety and pay a fine to the government than it is to actually do the ethically correct thing. Anyway, that's just an aside. Okay, so then I have a couple of YouTube videos I want to just recommend. This one, it's only 10 minutes and 50 seconds long, but it is about the paradox of supporting Hogwarts Legacy. If you've not been following it, it's a game that came out recently. There's been a lot of discussion online and also during Twitch streams about the ethics of buying, supporting, live streaming that game. And there have been a lot of hot takes, some really good, some really silly, some very surprising, on every sort of aspect of this discussion. And I think that this one is one of the better ones that I've seen. And it's the best short form discussion of what is the actual material reality of buying a game by someone that enriches and hyper enhances the status of somebody whose ethics we might disagree with. And I think that again, it's, as this person says here in the description, I'm not necessarily saying playing wizard game makes you a bad person, but it's a choice, and as choices have consequences. If you're making that choice, be mature enough to accept that. You can't have it both ways. And I think that, this is a really good aspect of also, what does it mean to be an ally? And what does it mean to have values? Because if we have values only when it's easy, those aren't really values. Those are ideals that we might have, or call it hobbies. Values should be the things that you stick to even when there are negative consequences for yourself, such as you don't get to play a video game that you would like to play. Okay, and this is another video that I thought was really cute, and it's about how City Skylines is building better urbanism, and I think that it's really nice. They do include a link to this video called How City Skylines Makes You Plan Bad Cities. And I technically agree with what that video is saying. However, it's really focused on City Skylines isn't a perfect representation of reality. And I'm if I don't want to play a video game where I have to go to 6 weeks of city council meetings to get a new playground put into my neighborhood. And I don't need that level of realism, because I could just go do that in real life. That's, a difficult game to sell, I think. And the YouTube video it links to here, I think makes some good points, and other points where I'm okay. And I know I shared this last time, but it's worth sharing again about how the idea of time management is capitalist propaganda. And I think it's good to just think about, what does it mean to how do I want to say this? It comes back to that sense of alienation, where we are alienated from ourselves, from our labor, from community, because we're supposed to be basically cogs in this machine. And I think that it's, important for us to think about, what is then the effect on our sense of our experience of ourselves? Do we then feel like, oh, I'm wasting my life, I need to grind, I need to I'm not rich, I need to do all these other things, and why we might be having those kinds of feelings, and maybe what we can do about it. Okay, so let's shift topic and talk about friendship instead. And I saw this a tweet. I saw it posted on Facebook, and it really got me. Yeah, thank you, Verontor. Yeah, I'm all for people who have questions and want to engage with things, but like coming in and saying I talk too much, why are you watching my stream then? I mean, like, I get it. I'm talking about things, whatever. I mean, this is a just chatting stream. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure there are plenty of other streamers that person can enjoy that are not me. Okay, so I saw this tweet that was posted on Facebook that was, the way someone fits you into their schedule says a lot about how they feel about you. And like, I do and don't agree with this. And I want to kind of talk about this in particular, because I think it has to do a lot with how we relate to romantic relationships, but also how we relate to friendships. And the ways in which we might, one, not ourselves invest in potential friendships because we miss the signs of the friendship having promise, and the ways we also might back away from friendships because it doesn't feel immediately like it is a, ideal, and all these other things in between. So this also comes back to the book we looked at a little bit last week on Valentine's Day called He's Not That Into You. And so I really want to stress with that book, I'm not saying that I agree with like every aspect of it. I don't totally agree with the particular gender dynamics it wants to put forward about like, this, it should always be the guy doing all of these things in heterosexual relationships. And it's not even like interacting with, queer relationships or anything. But some of the main points that it's expressing are, I think, incredibly accurate, which is that if somebody actually likes you, whether it's as a friend, as a romantic partner, as whatever, they will show you in some manner. And it also comes down to consent, which is, do I actually give you enough information about me and the way I move in these spaces to know whether or not I'm actually, let me back up. What looks like friendship to one person might not look like friendship to another. What might be a way I show friendship and companionship, how I might communicate interest to somebody, might not register for other people. And that is important to recognize, that like people can be communicating intent or desire for connection or friendship in a way that does not register for you, or you can be doing it in a way that doesn't register for other people. And the more informed consent we're able to give each other, the more information and understanding, the better likelihood we have that these things will communicate, and or that if they don't communicate, we have opened the avenues for us to actually talk about it, right? I have people that I really like as friends, and we don't get to see each other that often because we're really busy, but we say, for example, talk about that. And we let each other know, like, hey, I really want to be your friend. And also we're super busy. So this here, I want to say, like, this is true, and also a word of caution against taking this idea too far. If somebody never is actually going to make time for you, if somebody is, people can genuinely always be busy, but we also do have the ability to do something like send a small text to each other now and then. There are moments where we can have time to show investment in friendships and relationships. And, for me, I often like to let people know, hey, it might take me a little while to get back to you. Or like, if you send me a message and I read it and I don't respond, probably I just got really busy and I forgot about it. Or if I don't even look at it, it's probably because I got the notification, didn't have time to answer, and then got a million other messages and forgot about it. So just ping me again, just like pop back in there, because it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's probably just that, I'm I have ADHD and I'm not always good at keeping up with these things. So that's an example of giving more information that's really nice and really helpful for this. And if I have a friend who only ever reaches out to talk to me when they have a problem and they don't actually want to develop any other type of friendship, that's worth investigating and that's worth paying attention to. Is this person actually interested in being my friend, or do they just want me in their life for the sake of giving advice? And if they only really want advice from me, how do I feel about then having that friendship with them? If I have somebody who only wants to hang out with me when they're, already going to be doing something else that happens to be in my area, well, that might be fine. Or it might make me feel like, okay, I'm just the friend that's here to make sure you don't have to be lonely when you do this thing or something. You're coming into the city and I know I'm the only person you know in the city, and you only ever want to hang out with me when you were already coming to the city for something else. Maybe that's fine. Maybe I want to talk with you about it. And we should be careful of this. I had a friend a million years ago when I was in high school. I had these two people I was friends with, and we were like this little buddy group of three, and we were really close. And two of us had driver's licenses and cars, and one of us did not. I started dating the person who did not have a car. And what often ended up happening is me and the other person who did have a car would take sort of turns driving the third friend around and making sure they got to places, or driving each other around and kind of balancing that out. And then once I started dating the person who didn't have a car, there were sort of kind of intangible shifts that happen in the dynamics between all of us, as it should be expected when, a group of friends, some of them start dating each other. However, it did start to feel like the other friend who had a car, to them, it started to feel like we were only using them to be able to hang out with each other, only inviting that person to hang out when it meant that we could then me and the person I was dating could see each other. And then they felt left out of these spaces. And it was really good that my friend said this to me, that they were like, hey, I kind of feel like I'm being used here. I feel like you don't actually want to hang out with me. You just want me to be here to be the chauffeur and then to leave, basically. And that was definitely not our intention whatsoever. But when I actually looked at it, I was like, yeah, actually it makes sense why this person would feel this way. And we needed to change our behavior. We needed to make sure that we weren't doing that in practice, regardless of our intentions. And that took, me and the person I was dating, we had to take some time to really think about ourselves and really think about, do we feel okay with the way we've been relating to this other friend? Do we feel okay about the way we include them or don't include them in things? And, it said a lot about how we felt about that person, and that we had become the priority to each other because we were dating. We were also teenagers, it makes sense. However, it was shitty. It was shitty. We really needed to be like, okay, we can't just do couple things and have our friend here at the same time. We should actually, involve this person in a more meaningful way. And some of it was also just this person's feelings, but we still needed to interact with that, right? So it's not to say that if someone's not constantly calling you, they're not really your friend. There's another thing that I see happen a lot where people will be like, I'm pissed off at this friend of mine or this family member. They haven't called me in a year and I guess they don't care about me at all. To which I always say, okay, but have you called them in a year? Because people can also take this idea way too far and want to test it. And then they pull away from a friendship, a relationship, a family connection, and they say, aha, look, this person hasn't reached out to me. Therefore, I'm not really a priority to them. But it's well, they might be sitting there thinking the same thing. They might be thinking, oh man, this person used to involve me in their life all the time and now they're not anymore. I guess I must have done something wrong. Or, whatever. There are lots of things that can lead to both imbalanced dynamics, but also lead to people kind of falling off the face of the earth with each other. And so Palinelki said, if you call me every day, I never have to call you. That's also a great point, which is that if we have this dynamic, it's really hard for it to give me space to go the other way. And so it's definitely one of those things where it's better to just talk about it with each other. Don't try to play games. Don't try to test each other, because you're going to, just by creating the test, you're going to bias the results, if that makes sense, because you're setting it up to give you the answer you're worried you're going to get, basically. So what does that mean? Just have a conversation with people. Just say like, yo, I feel like I'm always calling you and you're never calling me. What do you think? Do you get that same impression? Would you call me if I didn't call you? And I think that that's, the kind of thing that's fair to ask each other. Aradu, you say, if you never give me the opportunity to call you, you can't be surprised that I never call you. And also it's tough because if you've already gotten into this dynamic, this habit, remember, it's harder to change those things and it can take a really long time. So I think it's really good to be careful of this idea. It's both true and it can be taken too far. I want to talk one more second about, or just a little bit more about the book He's Not That Into You, because again, setting aside the incredibly, outdated ideas about gender and the heteronormivity in it, it does actually have good core advice. And so there's this Reddit post here. I'll share it with you all. And it's from Dating Over 30. It was a question that was asked 3 years ago. And the person asked, I recently decided to, or the title is How Relevant Is He's Not That Into You Now? I recently decided to leaf through my copy, and I remember how big an impact it had on me when I was in my 20s. Because of it, I am quicker to accept it when a guy isn't into me and less likely to accept BS behavior, or so I would like to believe. I still need to remind myself once in a while, though, that I'm worthy of having someone interested. But now in my 30s, I also feel like I have moved on from this book. People have busy lives, and I can accept it more readily if a guy isn't interested. What about you guys? How relevant do you think this book is? So again, this has got to be one of those balance things, right? The book really says like a person's not that into you if they're not doing these types of things. And it's always got to be taken in context, right? If I'm the kind of person who works really strange hours and has a really stressful job, or, I've got kids and I've got all these other demands on my time, what it's going to look like for me to express interest in someone, whether it's a friendship or a relationship, is going to be a bit different than if I was like, a college student and I had a lot more free time. Or, not all college students have a ton of free time either. But that being said, the core ideas in this book are still actually, I think, really useful. So this person whose account seems to have been deleted says it's totally relevant. The basic premise of the book is that if someone is into you, they'll make you a priority, make time for you, etc. In my experience, that's totally true. I think back on when my partner and I were first dating. He is extremely busy, has been for as long as I've known him. That's a few years longer than we've been together, but he found time to get lunch with me a couple times a week, to spend every weekend together, to show up at my office with snacks when he knew I was working on something crazy. He was into me, so he showed up. He made time, etc. Whereas other guys expected me to do all the coordination, all the showing up, and would brush me off because they weren't into me. It's just as relevant now as it ever was. And this reply says this not only applies to dating, but also to a relationship. And I would say it also applies to friendship. Now, obviously, culturally, we don't have the same expectations of friendship as we do romantic relationships. However, if I really like somebody as a friend, I probably want to know what's going on with their life. I can get really sad when I have somebody that I feel like I'm really good friends with, and then I realize there's all this stuff that's happened in their life that I had no way of knowing about that other people that are in our friend group do. And I'm kind of like, where did you get this information? Is it just like some of it comes down to people post things on, say, Facebook and kind of expect that everybody's seen it. And like, I never go on Facebook really. I use Messenger and that's about it. And I don't have time to like follow Instagram and stuff. Like I really don't use social media that much and it's less and less all the time. But some of it is also like, is everyone part of a Telegram group? Is there, or a WhatsApp group that I'm not part of? Or what is this sort of, why do I not have this information and what's going on there? Because I would like to be invested in people's lives. I want to know what's going on with my friends. I want to know, like, what's new in their life and what are their stresses and their accomplishments and all of these things, and not, be unable to respond to these things. And, it's nice to be able to know ahead of time, for example, oh, my friend's birthday is coming up. And I know that they really like this kind of cake, or they hate surprises, or they don't want gifts, and be able to actually respond to that. And so this is true of friendships and relationships and dating. We should do our best to actually show people that we're interested. And if we don't also get a reciprocation there, if somebody's always down to like take you up on your offer of you can stay at my place anytime you come to visit, but they're not that interested in like really including you and then what they do when they're visiting, that's a pretty good sign. If somebody isn't down to, say, prioritize making plans with you ever, then that also says something. If you've got a friend and you want to go do something with them and you haven't gone and done something with them in a while, but every time you try to plan something with them, they're prioritizing a different group of friends. Well, I mean, that's okay. They're allowed to have other friends, of course, but if it's every time, even when you try to plan things in advance, or if they're canceling plans with you because they're like, oh, this other opportunity came up, that tells you a little bit about their priorities. Now, things happen, things come up, especially as people do things like have kids or more job responsibilities or other demands on their time. But we're kind of looking at like the holistically. And it's worth reflecting on, are we doing this to people who are our friends? I have people who I'm like nebulously interested in getting to know, but I find myself not really prioritizing hangouts with them. Maybe we've hung out once or twice, and when other opportunities come up, I'm just kind of like, eh. But I have other people where if they invite me to do something, I'm going to say, do my best to make sure I can. If someone says, hey, Thursday, do you want to go out for a walk or drinks or see a movie with me or come over to my place for dinner? I'm going to say, okay, unless I have, I'm actively teaching a class or something, I teach a lot of classes in the evening. I'm going to say, like, think to myself, what do I need to do to make sure I have the energy to show up for that on Thursday? What can I do today and Wednesday and Thursday during the day to make sure I'm actually going to be there and I'm not going to flake on my friend at the last minute? What can I do to be invested in that? So it's worth reflecting on your friendships. Do we feel like our efforts are reciprocated? And do we feel like we're actually reciprocating the efforts that come our way? So other people talk a lot about this book and what about people being fake, giving you all the compliments, messaging you constantly, asks you on dates, and then further down the road, just drop you overnight when they get another offer. Lukewarm is easy to avoid, but enthusiasm that evaporates overnight can't be genuine. And there is a whole chapter dedicated to this, including, and I think that this advice applies in any direction with any kind of couple, and it also applies to friendship. And the message here is if somebody just disappears on you, they aren't that into you. Now, we also need to have caveats for things like depression and ADHD. I have both depression and ADHD. There can be times where like I go months without talking to people because I'm in, a depressive spiral or like I'm really stressed out. However, I do still try to make some effort. I will send people a meme now and then. I'll send a text saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, as much as I possibly can. But I also let people know ahead of time, hey, I have ADHD and this is what it can look like in friendships. And I also have depression and this is what it can look like in friendships. And I want you to know that if you see me backing away or like not interacting, it's not because I'm uninterested. Yeah, Paladin Elk. If someone gets drafted and sent overseas, they're not that into you. I mean, definitely no, but I can see people taking it way too far in that way. But like, if I was dating somebody and they got drafted and sent overseas, do I still send them letters? Do I send them a care package ever? Like, maybe I don't have the money to send a care package, but I probably have the money for some stamps. It's important. And yeah, Captain America would disagree. Getting frozen in ice for decades, obviously an extenuating circumstance. But one of the other points here is if you're getting mixed messages, pay attention to that. If somebody is giving you mixed messages romantically or in a friendship situation, yeah, Barantor, you said this is a good reminder that I need to tell a few friends this about backing away. I mean, it's a consent thing where it's like if people have enough information that can help them know, one, do they want to be in this friendship with me? Or also like how to navigate those boundaries. I genuinely love it when people show up to my house, especially if I'm in a depressive state. If I have a friend who notices, hey, I'm in a depressive state, or Ariana seems like, they're in a depressive state, I'm going to just like bring some chocolates and, a good book over or something, and then just like show up, or like a DVD and be like, hey, let's watch this movie. That would be great. There might be reasons why I like can't drop what I'm doing and watch a movie with them. I might have to teach or something, but that would be great. And that's part of also our consent framework, because I might also have friends who, if I just showed up unannounced at their house, they would be like, are you a psycho killer? Like, why would you do that? But for me, I'm very much like, I love it when people show up, especially because I can get so in my head about these things. I can be like, I don't look good enough. My face is too puffy today. I need to put makeup on, or I feel gross, or like, oh, I can like kind of just really beat myself up to the point of feeling like I don't deserve to be seen by people. And if I am going to be seen by people, I will be judged or something will be bad about it. And if a friend just kind of says, whatever, I don't care if you haven't showered in 3 days, like we're coming in and hanging out, that'd be great. Like that would really be helpful for me. And that is a consent framework thing as well. Hi, Dustin. You said, I have a friend with a doormat that has, did you text me before knocking on my door? And I think that that's also great. That can be a nice in between too. Like, between no contact and just showing up, it can be like texting someone and be like, hey, can I drop by your place today and hang out with you for 10 minutes or something? Oh, thank you for the follow. Super sweet Xana. Welcome. So we want to, again, I think that book has a lot of really good advice in it. You just want to sort of put it into context, take it with a grain of salt, and really let it go both ways. If I've got somebody who I'm like, oh man, if I were dating still, I've had times where I've had someone where I'm like, wow, they're really good looking and I enjoy having sex with them. But anytime they wanted to do something with me that like wasn't just basically let's go have sex, I would just be like, oh, I'm kind of busy or whatever. And I didn't necessarily pay attention to that. And I should have, because it should have helped me realize I don't really like this person. I don't really like hanging out with this person. I've had people I had dated for more than a year, and it took me a while to realize that being with this person makes me feel miserable. But I'm with them because, I'm lonely, or, because I'm afraid to be alone, or because I'm just don't know what else to do with my time, or like I feel obligated in some weird way to like keep working on this relationship. And reading this book when I was in my mid 20s really helped me stop doing that. You know, I had a friend for a while that when I first met them, I was kind of like, there was definitely like a spark between us. There was some, you know, feelings going on. And we were hanging out with each other a lot. We had like maybe kissed a little bit, held hands, but it was kind of like we'd both just gotten out of like messy relationships. We weren't really ready to do anything yet. And we wanted to take it slow. However, I like one time decided to go visit some friends in another city and spend some time with them. And then this person like really took it personally, and then they were kind of like cold. They would do this like hot and cold thing. And this was just a couple of weeks where I was like, you know what? I'm not interested in dating this person. And I don't think they're actually interested in dating me. I think they're interested in having somebody who fits neatly into a hole that they have in their life and not actually having a relationship with me. And it continued like that continued in our friendship. And there was a lot that I got from that friendship. There were reasons why I continued to sort of interact with that friendship. But the whole time I knew, like, this person likes me in this very conditional way, not just romantically, but also as a friend. And I knew that this relationship had a time limit on it, that it would get to a point where it wouldn't be good for us anymore. But I liked that person, and there were a lot of things I got from being in that friendship. But because I could have this mental model in my head of like, is this person actually giving me an indication that they like me as a person and as a friend? Or are they giving me indications that they don't really like me that much? They like some idea of who I might become. Being able to keep that model in my head meant I could approach this relationship in a way that felt good to me, that I could set certain types of boundaries and I could be like, all right, this is how I am, and I'm not going to prioritize this friendship. And now we don't talk to each other more, and it's in the end for the best. But I still benefited, and I know that they benefited a lot from this friendship, that we really pushed each other to grow in some really important ways. So this book does have good advice. There's a nice little summary here that I want to give you all. And the big takeaways are this, and I'm going to switch it into sort of gender neutral language because I think it's more to the point. The big takeaways are if they aren't seeking out your attention, they're not that into you. Don't make excuses for why they aren't calling you or texting you first. They know how to, they just don't. So if somebody isn't ever calling you or texting you or trying to have any connection with you, and it's always you initiating that, you're not that exciting to them as a friend, as a partner, as whatever, because they would reach out in some manner, right? It's always in context of who that person is and what their default is. But if I really like being friends with somebody, I do regularly reach out to them, and regular is variable, and my regular is not somebody else's regular, but I still try. I still make some effort. And even when I'm in like the deepest pits of depression, I'm gonna like be looking at memes to distract myself and be like, this meme, I know this friend would think this is funny. I'm gonna send it to them. No context, no comment, just be like, oop, there you go. But that's me. That's not everybody. But I'm still making some kind of effort to be connected with this person. Okay, if they're avoiding labels, they aren't that into you. If they want you to be their girlfriend, boyfriend, friend, they will let you know. So another way that this can go with friendships is if you say run into a third person, you're out, you're going for a walk with this friend or you're getting coffee and you run into someone else and they say, oh, this is my acquaintance, or like, oh, they don't say like, oh, here's my friend. Here's my friend. They use some sort of vague, non-committal language. And the same goes for dating. If they don't say like, oh yeah, this is the person I've been dating. Yeah, And that also goes to like if they aren't including you, there's a lot of in even this book friendship processes that we've where is it? Here we go. Sorry. Um, Here, dyadic factors. This is basically even in friendship. Does this person then include you in their larger friendship contexts? If I meet somebody who seems like a really cool friend and I'm like excited about having met them, I will tell my other friends, I just met this person. I think they're great and I think you would like them too. Or I think they're totally great and I don't think you two would get along, but I want you to know. I'm going to tell my parents about it when I talk to them. I'm like, oh, I've just made this friend. Like, I have a friend here named Ollie. They sometimes watch the streams. I really like being their friends. Their friend, and they live in a different country, so we don't see each other that often. But we text every now and then. We send each other memes. But like when I first started becoming friends with them, I was even like sending pictures of them to my mom to be like, look at how cool this person is. I'm so excited that I met them and like I can't wait to hang out with them again. And then when we do hang out, we'll like talk for hours and hours and hours, and it's great. And again, that's me. Not everybody's going to be like this. Not everyone's going to be like, sending pictures to their mom of their new friends and be like, look at how cool this person is. But I get excited about somebody I'm going to be friends with, and I want to include them. And the same is true with dating. If I'm actually excited about dating somebody, I'm not going to be embarrassed to tell people about it. But if I am embarrassed to say to my friends, oh, hey, I've been dating this person, or there's somebody I like, that's probably an indication that I'm not that into them. Like there is an incongruence. I should listen to that feeling. And it goes in the other direction. If somebody doesn't actually want you to meet their friends, there could be like we've gone on 2 dates, I need a little bit more time to get to know you. But if you've been dating for, a little while or been hanging out as friends for a little while and they're never interested in including you, they're probably not that interested in you. That also can go with like, your coworker friend. Is there any interest in including each other in spaces outside of work? Are you actually interested in building that friendship outside of these context-dependent scenarios? If not, it's a friendship that's probably going to end. I remember I was taking a university class during a summer break. I often took like a full course load year round because I was a big nerd. And I was taking an astronomy class, not astrology, astronomy class at a local community college. And I met someone there whose name was also Ariana. And we had almost the same birth date. And we were like really buddy, like right away. It was great. And we were like, yeah, we're going to be friends forever. And the professor of the class said, no, you aren't. And we were just like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I can tell that you two are going to be great friends during this class. But the second the class is over, you're never going to see each other again. And we were both just like, what? And then I realized he was right. And that is exactly what happened. Because while we really liked interacting with each other in the class, neither of us ever made any kind of effort to take it outside of the classroom. We weren't really interested in, can we fold each other into each other's lives? Can I am I ever going to invite this person out? Are they ever going to invite me out? And that factor, do we actually build any other kind of structure with each other, is important. Okay, next takeaway from this book. This is more about dating. If they're involved with someone else they aren't that into. Obviously, the exception is polyamory, but if they've got some kind of sketchy polyamory thing going on, like I had a friend a while back who I'm not friends with anymore. He told everybody he and his wife were in an open marriage and he was allowed to date and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, okay, cool, whatever. Turns out it was like he basically strong-armed his wife into that. She didn't want to hear anything about it. I got my first indication when he was like, oh, my wife is jealous because I'm hanging out with all of you. And I'm like, why? We're like just your friends. And it's because he had been basically indicating to his wife that we were like his harem, which was not true. But he also didn't want us to like have contact with each other that much. He wanted to always be there when any of us were hanging out with each other. there's all this stuff going on, and he wasn't actually interested in being friends with any of us, really. He was interested in interacting with this like idea he had of what it meant to be our friends and what it meant to have a lot of female friends. And there's a lot of people who get into polyamory and genuinely should not. There are a lot of people who like think that polyamory is going to be the thing that makes their life interesting. There are people that think that polyamory is going to be the way they get like laid constantly, that they're just going to be like drowning in sexual fluids or whatever, and that's going to be some solution to some like hole that they feel. And it's just not. It's just not. And the number one question I always want to ask these people, and this is a question we should all ask ourselves, generally speaking, about many of the things that we do. How is this behavior that I have going to work out for me when I'm in my 70s? Are people still going to be letting me get away with it? Is it going to still be getting me what I want? Is it still going to be read as cute? Or is it going to be seen as depressing as fuck? Is it going to mean that I am alone and have alienated everybody around me? So if I'm really cavalier with the feelings of everybody I'm friends with or in a romantic relationship with or in my polycule, because I'm just like, whatever, relationship anarchy, I'm just going to do whatever I want, well, eventually people are going to get tired of your shit. And, but we should ask ourselves this as well for friendships. If I never reciprocate, if I never reach back out to people, if I always wait to be invited to things, if I'm never actually sort of trying to build anything, do I think I'm still going to have friends when I'm in my 70s? If I don't change anything about my behavior now? And it's a scary question to ask a lot of the time. We can also do about our romantic relationships, right? If let's say you're in a romantic relationship and it's also a sexual relationship, sex drives go up and down, right? It's very, very normal that people get desynced over time, that there are times where you have a lot of sex drive, there are times that you don't. If you put too much pressure on it and you make it too big of a deal, it tends to cause all these other long-term problems. People can get kind of like gun shy about sex, et cetera, et cetera. But if it becomes the kind of thing where like there's no longer sex or romance or any kind of intimacy, and again, it can also be true in asexual couples, if there's no intimacy, and by intimacy, I mean sort of like deep, undistracted interactions with each other where you're really connecting. It doesn't have to be for a long time. You can have an intimate moment that's like 5 seconds long, but are we actually acknowledging each other as full people and being there with each other? If we get into a space where we don't have that anymore, if we don't change that behavior, is this relationship going to still be good in 10 years? Or is it going to have probably fallen apart? Is it going to be, this is something I ask myself sometimes. I can have a hard time sending my work down in the evening and just like hanging out with Charlie. And I can get so stuck in being at my computer that I'm just like, oh, like whatever, I have 2 monitors. Let's just like put something to watch on the second monitor while I keep working. That's okay in certain periods of time. But if I let that become my default habit, that's going to really probably not be good for our relationship if that lasts over years. Yeah, absolutely eroded. All right, I see you asked, I wonder how some of these things could apply to online friendships, more the visiting and inviting to things. Yeah, so that with online friendships, it's obviously hard and different, but it could be things like, do we actually interact with each other regularly? Do we talk about things? Do we share things with each other? If people only ever really message when they're feeling super lonely or just want someone to chat with, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not going to lead to a deepening friendship versus saying like, hey, this meme made me think of you, or, oh, you should check out this TV show or something. And also, there are ways to hang out online. It can be playing a game together, whether it's like a co-op video game or whatever. You can play role-playing games together. You could, share links to things with each other and then interact about it and talk about it. You could like do a movie watch party, etc. There are things. It can be harder with online friendships. Remember, we've talked a lot about how physical proximity is the number one predicting factor in how likely a friendship is to actually continue and to bloom into a deeper friendship. But anyway, yeah, okay. Back to the point 3 with dating. If they're in a committed monogamous relationship, just don't. Just don't. If somebody says to you, hey, I'm kind of full up on friends, even if you really like each other and there's a lot of potential there, you should listen to that. Because not everybody's going to always have more room for more friendships in their life. All right, they're not that into you if they break up with you. So this also means like if a conflict gets to the point where it like causes a sever in the relationship, regardless of the type of relationship it is, that should be a sign. Because for a relationship of any kind to be really sustainable, you need to be able to work through conflict and difficulty. Conflict is inevitable. There are going to be times where we disagree with each other. There are going to be times where we miscommunicate. There are going to be times where, or ultimatums. And remember, ultimatums are different than boundaries because boundaries are how I say, here is the limit to which I will continue to participate in this situation. And if it goes beyond this limit, I'm going to remove myself from the situation or I'm not going to engage anymore. Ultimatums is about what you are allowed to do. And I might say like, hey, if you keep texting this person instead of, hanging out with me, I'm just going to go home. That's a boundary. If I say, you can't text this person while we're hanging out, I can't accept that. And if you keep doing that, I'm never going to talk to you again, or I'm going to like tell everybody what an asshole you are. Different. That's an ultimatum. A boundary is me saying, hey, I get that you want to talk to this person. Maybe it's a bad time. Maybe they've got something going on, but it doesn't feel good to me for you to keep texting them instead of hanging out with me. So if you're going to keep doing that, I'm going to go and we can maybe hang out another time. Okay. So if somebody is really allowing a bunch of conflict to happen and then not trying to repair things and then really severing ties with you, that's probably not a sustainable friendship, right? If I have a friend, for example, here who we had some miscommunication this weekend, and I was at an event that they had organized. I thought it was the kind of thing where they like rented this space and they had one ticket for the whole day, and I was going to go there and teach consent basics, and I was doing them a favor by doing it for free. Turns out that's not at all what happened. They ended up having to pay more money to cover my time slot because of, I should have charged money for tickets for people to come. And I thought it was like, we completely miscommunicated. We both had very different understandings of things. If that kind of thing then turned around and the person was like, I'm never going to do business with this person again. I'm never going to interact with them in this way again. I mean, they're allowed to make that decision, but we should have some communication about it. Because we're both teachers, we're both organizers, we both work in these spaces. Miscommunications are likely to happen. We're mixing, our jobs and business and friendship, so it's riskier. But we were able to talk about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Like, here, I can contribute this money. And, next time, let's talk about doing it differently. Like, I would not have agreed to come and teach it this weekend had I known that there was going to be like $100 bill for the rental that I had to pay, because we teach consent basics for free. I would have done it differently. However, we were able to be honest with each other and work through that. And she was able to communicate to me the ways that the situation had made her feel stressed. So we were really able to work through that. But if that person had had this big reaction, that might say a lot more about them, but it also says about, their level of investment in a friendship. Aradin, you said, I think my tendency to not want to bother or intrude on other people is one of the main reasons. 1 second. I have a hard time developing friendships online. All my friends are online these days. Yeah, not wanting to bother, not wanting to intrude is tough too, because like, there's also the question of, are all the people you're making friends with online, do they also only have online friends? because it also is pretty normal for people to want to prioritize not being at the computer all the time, especially if they have to work at the computer, and to prioritize the friends that they can see in person versus the ones that they only see online. All right. So continuing, let's look at just a reminder here of the stages of friendship. I'm going to put this into the chat again as well. So we have here the first level of friendship, which is role delimited interaction. So that would be like the person who's also named Ariana that I knew in that class, right? We only interacted with each other in the context of that class. We really liked each other in that context, but that the friendship was limited to that context and that context only. Then you get into friendly relations, moving toward friendship, nascent friendship, stabilized friendship, and then you can also have, you might stay in 5 forever, but you could have waning friendship and post friendship. And this is sort of the way it generally goes. People often make mistakes in these early spaces by assuming more closeness than actually exists and opening up too quickly, info trauma dumping on the person, or people make a lot of mistakes later by not continuing to invest in the friendship, taking it for granted, assuming that it will always be there, even if you completely abandon it. Not likely to be very good. It's, I know games like Stardew Valley, like the friendships can decay over time, but it's more complicated than that even. And, if I was trying to be friends with someone and I missed their birthday for years, probably not good. If I just didn't even say happy birthday to them and I didn't, and there's like a big community calendar in the center of town that tells me when their birthdays are, probably it's not as good of an excuse. However, in this game, it's a lot more forgiving. So here there is, we talked a little bit about this idea of the Johari window in a previous stream. And I'll just read this here. The Johari window is a model that depicts the 4 aspects of ourselves: the publicly known or open self, the hidden self that we don't tell anyone about, the things about ourselves that others know but we don't, or and the great unknown self, which is the self of the future, our potential. So what is known to others and known to ourselves is, the parts of our personality we really interact with. The parts that we know about ourselves but others don't are the very private or hidden secret things. And then the things that other people know about us but that we don't know are our awareness gaps, the things that we might want to learn about ourselves, is how do we come off to people? And then there's the unknown unknowns, which nobody knows about ourselves. And it's good to think about this in terms of how do these different aspects affect friendship? Are there things that we know about ourselves that other people don't know that they ought to know that would give them more ability to actually interact with us in a way that feels good and consensual to us and to them? Are there things that we don't realize about ourselves that other people do? And how are we going to get that information? How do we come off? These are really important questions to be asking. And let's look at some life hacks about making friends. Let's read this article, and then I probably will have to stop after reading this article because I have a class that I have to teach tonight on supporting survivors of sexual trauma, and I need to eat dinner in between. Okay. So why it's hard to make friends and what to do about it. I'm going to paste this into the chat here. Making friends can be hard because of one's lack of social skills, because our society is generally making us more isolated, because of our modern busy lifestyles, or because we no longer have a context for meeting people like we did in college or high school. So really all the things we've talked about. There is no single cause that makes this crucial skill hard for us. It's actually a group of causes. In this article, we're going to tackle the main reasons you may find it hard to make friends and how to overcome them so you can get the happy social life you want. So remember, one of the biggest is if you're not giving yourself the opportunity or there's no structure in your daily life for interacting with the people you're already friends with or building a friendship with, or you are there's no way for you to meet new people, the situation's not going to change. We might have to change those base facts before we even have the opportunity to work on these other things. And, the socially isolated aspect is car dependency and lack of third places and our jobs creeping into every aspect of our lives. And if we lack the social skills to make friends, it can get even harder to get those social skills the older we get. It's not impossible, it just gets harder. And exactly, Rodden, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Okay, so the first thing here says you think that everyone else is already in a closed group of friends. Did you know that the lonelier the person is, the more they tend to only notice extroverted people who have a great time with friends? Somehow the mind gets unaware to all others who are maybe even more lonely. It's just a mental illusion. At the same time, most friendships are superficial. People can hang out with others just to avoid being alone. Everyone is craving for more close and loyal friendships, so don't be fooled by appearances. So this is really common. I even see this in conversations with people I'm close with, where we go to an event or a party or something, and they just focus on, look at the most extroverted, happy people here. I'm not them, therefore I don't actually belong here, or I'm not having a good time here. And remember, one of the things that's also tough is with depression, we get into increased self-referential thinking. So we take ourselves out of context and we tend to just think, I'm separate from everybody else in these different ways. And exactly, Arad, and doubly so with COVID, as now you are worried about going out in and of itself. Yeah. Okay, you learned that friends can be disappointing. If you got hurt by friends in the past, you might think that friendship is risky. What you may have missed is that these scars are lessons. They are new tricks under your belt. Bad friendship experiences are signals and new skills that allow you to filter people better. You get to become more safe as you gather friendship experience, and you'll see to the warning signs before you get disappointed. It's a wealth of knowledge that you shouldn't throw away. You can learn from them. This is definitely one of the big things for me. I've had a lot of really bad experiences with friends. I've had some big traumas that have to do with friendships. And it can make it so that part of me feels really anxious when I'm trying to become friends with people. Part of me thinks that either the friendship is going to go nowhere or it's going to become harmful. And so I need to remember that 99% of the people I've interacted with were perfectly fine. Okay. Great results don't seem to appear at first attempt. This is also one of those big ones. Remember, anytime we're trying something new, it's going to take a while for us to be good at them and also to see results. You don't go to the gym and do one sit up and say, where are my six-pack abs, right? It takes time and it takes persistence and it takes practice. Okay. If it's been a long time since you made a new friend, then knowing where to start can be difficult. A big common mistake is for someone to psych themselves into going out to socialize, then quickly get discouraged when they see that other people aren't very responsive to them. Your social skills may be dormant, or you may need to develop them as you could have, or you never developed them as you could have. If you want a great social life, you can't count on one single action step. You need new habits that are easy to implement gradually and a set of great social skills and techniques to use. So we talked about this one a lot, is give yourself small targeted practice. Don't try to put yourself into the one-on-one hangout over coffee or tea. That's going to be exhausting. Practice with let's do something really easy, like a structured activity where it limits the amount of time we actually have to talk to each other. Let me practice conversation and being engaging and interesting. Let me practice my time management skills in terms of how I regulate my energy slowly. Let me practice my active and reflective listening slowly to get time. Aradani said, if you were looking for abs, I hear that getting struck by lightning can give you abs. A line from The Flash. Nice. The what if they don't like me factor. Fear of rejection is also a big block. If you try to make friends with someone and it doesn't work out, you can rarely know why. It's usually a lot of speculation, whether you believe that you're not good enough, or whether you believe maybe this is a typo, you're not good enough, or they think that you're too good for them. It's usually just guesswork. You can never know what's going on with someone you don't know very well. Hi, Kettlestick. You don't have to choose a thinking process that discourages you. If someone isn't ready to meet or hang out with you, let it go. It can be anything. They must be busy. They may not be ready for new friends. They may have been hurt lately, etc. It can be anything, so never take a guess that may only discourage you. And this goes to the same ideas from that book, He's Not That Into You, which we can apply to friendships as well, is it's not about you. If someone's not that into you, if someone's not ready to be friends with you or in a relationship with you, it is not likely to have anything to do with you. It's most likely something going on in their life. It's either you don't match some sort of symbol they have in their head of what friendship or romance should look like. It can be that, they don't know how to prioritize this connection. It can be that, they're afraid of rejection. It can be that they've got terrible anxiety. I mean, for me, I know since moving to Austria, there are lots of people I could have potentially become friends with, but they kept wanting to only interact with me at really risky events where I'm like, I don't want to go to, an orgy in the middle of a pandemic. Also, like in general, I'm kind of good on orgies, but thanks for inviting me. But it comes down to people only tend to put feelers out for friendship. They tend to only make friendship bids so many times before they give up and move on. So there's also that, exposure effect that we've talked about, where sometimes going and the more somebody sees something, the more positive they tend to feel about it. So going someplace for even a few minutes, saying hi to some people and then leaving is better than not going at all. Obviously, COVID risk and other things apply. You're afraid to reveal who you are. Revealing who you are and your secrets is a part of making friends. If you're not ready to open up, that hesitance can block you from making new connections. Please note that you don't need to open up completely at once and can do so in stages. This is actually, I think, essential. Some people really appreciate someone who's just like an open book and will tell them everything. But unless you're really good at making it into a easy to follow and interesting to listen to compelling story about your life, probably don't. Take time with it. Do it slowly, because otherwise it's going to be overwhelming to people. They're unlikely to remember everything. And also it's important to remember that the less somebody knows you, the less context they have to place anything you tell them about yourself, right? Like if I've just met somebody and I have like a relevant story that I think people might be interesting, but the story is about like, some time I did something really, really impulsive or like quasi, questionable behavior, or I talk about like, all of my like terrible exes or something, and that's like the only real thing they know about me, it's going to be really hard for them to put that into any kind of context, right? It's going to be really hard for them to be like, okay, this is one small part of who Ariana is, and I can see that like, yes, sometimes she can be like, really wild or impulsive or do these things I would never do. But also she really likes to stay home and read books and be with her cats and can be a total homebody. And also she is usually the voice of reason in groups that are getting like really out of control. If somebody doesn't know all these things about me and I only tell them one part, it can be tough. So it's really important to consider when telling someone personal things, have I given them other context about me with which they can then place this thing? I don't want to come in and talk about like my deep, dark secrets if somebody doesn't know anything else about me or they only know a little bit. So this is a really important thing to be careful of. And it's also a consent thing, right? If somebody doesn't have much information about me and they can't actually place the things I'm telling them, they have to decide from limited information, do they feel safe to interact with me or not? And if I give them a bad impression, it's completely reasonable for them to be like, I don't totally feel good about interacting with this person. Oh no, Rod, and your internet died. Oh, welcome back. All right, so continuing, people are used to having others talking about generalities at first. If you get good at that, you can wait and get to know people before really revealing yourself gradually. At the same time, never think that people are that well adjusted and perfect. Everyone has their own quirks. Everyone has a side of themselves they're not too proud of or don't have the courage to reveal. You're not alone. The other thing about this is you might have a lot of self-insight. You might be like really aware of, like for me, I'm very aware of, because of my ADHD, whatever is in front of me tends to be the only thing I think about. I can be sometimes seem really flaky because of these other things. And it's, I try to be as good about that as I can. I try to manage it. I try to be respectful of people's time and communicate with people, et cetera, et cetera. However, if I tell that to people who say don't have a lot of self-insight, they might hear that and just think, wow, what a weirdo you are, even if it's also true about them. If I talk about how I can sometimes get like really hardcore anxieties about certain things, and I can talk myself out of like going to a party because I just tell myself there's no way I'm going to have fun here, and here's the list of all the reasons I'm not going to have fun, that's a very common thing to do. But if someone doesn't recognize that, they might just think, wow, this person's so incredibly insecure and anxious. I even had that conversation with someone a while back where we were both working at a festival, and the festival organizer, who was someone I was interested in becoming friends with, got really angry at me about something that really honestly had nothing to do with me. And the other person who was on my team, who I was also becoming friends with, saw that this kind of really threw me for a loop. And a lot of it had to do with how that person got angry at me, and the way they communicated to me really reminded me of some very like not good for me relationships I've had, not necessarily romantic, but like friendship or family relationships. And like the way they talk to me put me back into this mindset that took away a lot of my like good skills, where I was like, oh, this is really not triggering because it's not a PTSD thing, but it was really like, this makes me feel like I can't get my bearings in a situation. And it puts me into a state of wanting to be really people pleasing, but also really avoidant. And I was kind of having a bit of a meltdown. So I was trying to talk with this person to be like, can you help me get a reality check? This other person doesn't hate me, right? I didn't like make all the worst mistakes. But this person got the impression that I was an incredibly insecure person, and was like, I don't know if I can be friends with you because people who are really insecure make me feel really stressed out. And that was difficult because, I'm not a very insecure person, generally speaking. We all can have moments where we're insecure. We can all have contexts that we become insecure in. But because this person did not know much about me, they were reacting based off of 90% of the information they have about me is me talking about this big insecurity I have. And even still, they didn't have the awareness to realize everybody gets like that in some contexts. It's the same thing with like being reliable, right? I've had friends who get really fixated on whether or not someone is or isn't reliable. And I'm just like, everybody's going to be reliable in different ways. Some people are just sort of like in broad, strokes, kind of unreliable people. They'll promise and they never live up to the promises they make. But everybody's going to have things that they're not very reliable about. Don't ask me to be really reliable to like always come to things on time or early. I can't do that. Don't expect me to be super reliable about like remembering fine details about logistics. I'm not good at that. Even when I try, I tend to make big mistakes with it. But I am very reliable about if I'm going to do something, I'm going to aim for as much excellence as possible. I'm going to, if I'm in a professional capacity, I'm really going to show up as a professional. I'm very reliable about certain things and not very reliable about others. If Charlie says, hey, I'm out of socks and underwear, can you please do the laundry today? Charlie knows that he should probably text me at least once during the day to just double check that it's happening, because there is, you know, a 30 to 40% chance that I will forget because I get caught up in work or something. And that's just life. Okay, so what did you say? And I wouldn't necessarily say that it activated certain mental and emotional defense mechanisms. I think it's just something that kind of threw me for a loop, is more how I would say it. Like it really just caught me off guard and made it so I couldn't really get my bearings in the situation. It's the kind of thing where certain types of interactions, it's very hard for me to sort of keep track of things. Kettlestick, you said, somebody said, quote, I don't know if I can be friends with you because something, question mark. That's just seems like such a forward thing to say. Is that just me? Yeah, it really surprised me. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. I was actually really surprised by it. And yeah, it did lead to me being slightly less, you know, invested in that friendship for a while, because I was kind of like, well, everybody's got things like this. So if this person is really averse to people having insecurities at all, that means that that friendship is only ever going to go so deep, because everybody's got insecurities. And eventually in a friendship, if it goes deep enough, you're going to bump into those insecurities with each other. Yeah. Rodden, you said, I guess that depends on the person. I would say that it's fairly forward and straightforward. At least they gave a reason. I would appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, like, it was something that kind of took me aback and I was a little surprised, but I am actually still friends with this person and enjoy that friendship very much. And it was just, they didn't have much context. Also, like, to be completely fair, I was really stressed out by the situation and not showing up as my best self with all my skills. And I definitely told them a few personal things that were probably, we weren't at that level of friendship to really talk about yet. And so they didn't have much other context. And yeah, mistakes happen. And being able to work through them, though, is really important. Kettlestick, you said, yeah, if it were me, I would just think, that's kind of an extensive reaction and not say anything. I don't know, like, why even say that? You did one thing I thought was weird, and I'm just like, nope, go away. Yeah, I mean, I think that in fairness to them, it had to do with like exes of theirs who had a ton of insecurities that then made the romantic relationship incredibly stressful for them. And they were just like, a woman who might have anything mental health going on, alarm bells going off. And I think that, you know, that to me said, okay, this person needs to kind of work on maybe some internalized sexism that's going on, where, like, you know, a woman who has any sort of anxieties or anything, like, immediately feels like a red flag to them, because, like, nobody's got perfect mental health. Everybody's struggling. Just some people are sort of more aware of it, or their struggles are more obvious than others. But also, like, I got it. I was like, okay, yep, I probably told them a few too many personal things too quickly. I mean, I didn't think it was that quick because we had been talking for a while, but I was like, okay, yeah. But it ended up being fine in the end. But it does come down to one of those things also, like, when people tell you or show you who they are, you should believe them. You know, a friend I mentioned earlier with whom, like, our friendship seemed really conditional, told me in like the first week of being a friend, so many of people I've been friends with tell me they think that I'm a sociopath. And I genuinely should have listened to that more than I did. I genuinely should have just been like, okay, cool, nice meeting you, and like not tried to be friends with this person as much. Um, yeah, because it was just kind of a fucked up friendship. There were many things that I really gained from it and ways that I really appreciate having had it. And there are other ways where I'm like, girl, I mean, like, I was like, I don't know, 23 when I met that person. So, like, I didn't have a lot of life experience yet. But anyway, um, yeah, I think Candlestick, you're right. It's one of those things where I go, whoa, people come from such different places from me. Um, and yeah, this is one of those things that's also tough because I tend to be so, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I always am just kind of like, I don't know, let me just kind of figure it out. Let me see how I feel about interacting with you. So I have sometimes invested in friendships or romantic relationships where it really did not make sense. And I should have paid more attention to incongruities and all this other stuff. But, you know, we can't go back in time and change that. So now I'm more likely to pay attention to these things, right? I don't just get something that feels a bit off to me and then say, oh, whatever. I kind of go, all right, like I'm going to keep this in mind, maybe back off a little bit, decide as I get more information how I want to proceed. Kettlestick, you said people like to say sociopath a lot more than it should actually be used. I don't really have a good definition in my head, so I essentially just never use the word. Yeah, I mean, like technically, psychopath and sociopath are not like clinical terms. The closest thing would be something like antisocial personality disorder, but people often use it when someone is displaying traits from like the what could be called the dark triad, like callousness, um, or you know, not being very concerned about the impact they have on other people, or like grandiosity and narcissism, certain personality traits that we tend to that are not very like pro-social. But you're absolutely right. People do use the word sociopath or psychopath in ways that, yeah. Anyway, and that was the reaction I had. Like that's what I said to the person, and I was just like, oh well, like sociopath isn't actually, it doesn't really have like a clinical meaning, and this is usually what they mean in this way, and also like people tend to just use it as a stand-in for like I think you're a bit of an asshole, and like whatever. Okay, so let's finish up this article. You can't acknowledge that you actually need people. I think this is a big one as well. I think especially for a lot of people who consider themselves to be like misanthropes or, you know, whatever. Not everybody's going to need people to the same extent and in the same ways, but it can be difficult to have nobody. This is another common reason why people stay isolated. It's okay to think of yourself as an independent person, but who said that independent people have to be lonely? If you feel that power means that you don't need other people, it's maybe time to rethink that. The ability to bring other people in your life and have them on your side is more powerful. Like, I definitely know some people who take the idea that being independent means like never needing people in any manner, which is to me like just like a kind of perversion of like a very extreme version of libertarianism, where it's just like, nah, man, like you're allowed to need people. We all need people in certain extents. Like if I get appendicitis, I need somebody to fix that. I can't do that myself. If I'm moving, you know, like I'm going to need somebody to help, whether that's friends or paying for a moving company. But I'm not going to just be like, I'm strong. Like, come on. And some people really just feel like It's a sign of weakness to ever need anybody. Also, gosh, I'm just looking at this, how to make time work for you, a time mastery framework. And I'm just like, you know what? No, I don't even read that. Um, and a lot of you said, funny thought, if we ever develop time travel, what effect will that have on psychology? Kettlestick, you asked, you mean on the person who is time traveling? And Rodney, you said, I mean, in general, when Ariana said, well, you can't change the past, what if you actually could? And yeah, no person is an island. Kettlestick, you said, if my comebacks ever start being amazing, I probably found time travel. And Kettlestick, you asked, why don't you like the time mastery framework? I know why I wouldn't be interested in it. For me, I think it still comes down to this video. Time management is capitalist propaganda. Like, because it literally is, like, the way we think about time management now is very much influenced by old school poor labor practices and like anti-union ways of thinking about things. And like for a very long time, like people used to panic about yeah, it's totally okay that you missed it. But people used to panic about like, people reading books too much and thought, or the newspaper too much. Like, people complain now, oh, everyone's on their phones, no one talks to each other. People said the same thing when the newspaper became commonplace. Like everyone's just standing around reading the newspaper, nobody talks to each other. But also like min-maxing your time, it just I think really leads to an anxiety about what it means for our lives to have value, and value ends up getting measured in this idea of productivity rather than in like appreciation, enjoyment, depth of experience, connection. I would much rather spend an hour just like sitting with a friend, chatting about nothing while we like, enjoy the nice breeze in spring and or something, and like see people walking their dogs than spend that hour like, I don't know, reading the philosophy of identity and free will for the 50th time. I mean, not necessarily because like I actually really enjoy those things, but like, hustling or grinding or something. It's not about min-maxing your time. But I used to have a ton of anxiety about that. Like if I went and hung out with friends and just enjoyed myself or took a break and played a video game, I'd basically have a panic attack because I'd be like, I'm going to die someday and I haven't like achieved the world yet. I don't even know what it is I'm aiming for, but I have to do it. And yeah, life is, I think, honestly meant to be enjoyed. So if you enjoy doing it, it's not wasted time. It's just like, relationships and friendships that don't work out. If I enjoyed any aspect of it, if it was something I wanted at some point in the past, I don't think of it as wasted time. Um, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, going back to this article, where was I? Okay. If you learn how to make friends, then you'll never be obligated to be with anybody that doesn't deserve you. That's a more evolved way to see power. Power means that you choose who you hang out with. Your loner habits are too strong to break? Question mark. Habits are like rivers. You can't turn if you don't have enough willpower. At the same time, you don't need to be Superman to get a social life. All you need is a set of strategic techniques that will allow you to get new habits that automatically bring new people to your life. I don't necessarily like this idea of automatically, but anyway, the new social habits that work best if you subscribe to a club or commit to helping out in an organization that holds regular get-togethers. Good luck. So this is something that is really important. This is, I think we talked about it in, where is it? Give me a second. I gotta find, there's like an actual journal article I had up that was about this. There we go. This one here. This article, What Prevents People from Making Friends, a Taxonomy of Reasons. And we talked about things like personality traits, pragmatic reasons, etc. And that does bear out. And one of the best ways to do it is to have structure that it leads to regular interactions that then allows you to build in spontaneous interactions over time. Okay. Anyway, that's all for me for today. I am teaching a class. I need to go and do some other things. I'm sad we didn't get to play any Stardew Valley, but the person who's no longer in the chat really took up a lot of like time in the beginning, and we had to talk a lot more about things. Anyway, kind of threw me off track. But I will be back on Sunday with more discussion of consent and different Reddit interactions, I think is what I'll talk about. It's a very fun topic. We do have some upcoming workshops that I really want to recommend. Today is our class on supporting survivors of sexual trauma. I think that if you sign up now, you still can. But then we have on Wednesday, tomorrow, a class on writing codes of conduct. And then a class I'm very excited for on the 25th is our first class on our accountability processes. You know, Aradin, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, I think it was good to ban them. I want to be this very democratic about this. So if you've been given moderator powers and there's somebody who's like, you feel is just sort of dragging it down, I trust you. And for me, for the most part, I think that I'm often down to like give people the benefit of the doubt, but I just started ignoring that person because they were just asking these questions where I was just like, we talked about this before. They seem to be kind of anti, you know, anything that we're about. So like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but just wanting to go again of like, don't you think men and women are fundamentally different, have different roles in society? It's like, I can answer that question, but that's like, how many years do you have to actually get all of the answer from me? Because there is a lot that goes into how I'm going to address that question. If I'm going to give you an answer that's a complete answer. Yeah. Anyway, you all did great. There's no complaints there. And I appreciate you all having my back. So lastly, check out this class on accountability processes. If you've ever wondered what an accountability process is and like how to do one, it doesn't even have to be part of any sort of formal group or anything. It's just like, what do you do if you've heard you've messed up in some kind of way? If you've hurt somebody, if you made a mistake, how do you work on that? And how do you work on that in a way that is actually likely to produce results? And that can be everything from personal accountability to like, I spend too much time playing video games and it's keeping me from completing other things that are important to me. Or like it's affecting my relationship with my partner or my spouse. You know, I'm always playing this cell phone game. That literally happened. I was playing a cell phone game that I got while I was in Boston, and it wasn't even very good, but like it just had these little psychological tricks in it that made you constantly need to play it and made it kind of pleasurable. And even though I like deleted it off my phone 2 weeks ago, I'm like still thinking about it and still kind of wanting to like go back, and it was bad. It made it so I like wasn't really even interacting with Charlie, because in the evening I would just be like tap, 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 like doing these little things. And I needed to take accountability for that. And the fact that like I could not set good boundaries with that game and it was having a negative impact on my life. So I had to take steps to undo that and to like make up for the impact that it had been having. And, you know, accountability processes are things that I think is really good for all of us to know about. We're going to talk about like, how do people change? What kinds of changes are possible? How do we motivate change? How do we create structure around change, etc.? Then we also have coming up our women's consent discussion group. We have a great class that is pretty much, I think, only relevant to people in the United States, but it's on defamation law and talking about consent incidents. And we have lots of other really good things coming up, so check it out. Otherwise, we also, let me just put the class here. And then we also have a Patreon if you're interested in supporting us and helping to keep this work going. Please consider joining our Patreon. And otherwise, it was really great to hang out with you all today. Thank you all for joining this discussion. If there are topics that we haven't talked about ever that you're interested in, feel free to let me know in the Discord or in chat sometime, and I can prepare to talk about something related to the topics that you're interested in. And yeah, I hope you all have a good rest of your week, and hopefully I will talk to you all on Sunday. Thank you. Bye.